It's my absolute pleasure to be chairing this session titled The End of Growth. Before we get started, there's just a little bit of housekeeping we need to go through. Please keep your mobile phones on silent, and if you do wish to tweet, which I encourage you to do, please use the hashtag FODI. I also want to mention I don't usually sound like Marge Simpson. It's a product of all the pollen in the air, so sorry. Now, there will be time for Q&A at the end of the session. There are 2 microphones in the room. There will be one over here on the corner here, and there will be one just upstairs. So if you do have a question, I encourage you to actually come to the microphones, stand in line and just wait your turn. And also, can you please keep your questions succinct and short so that everyone has a chance to be heard. So, to today's session, which is obviously very popular. The issue of growth has been much talked about in the media. We hear about growth in China, growth in Australia, the lack of growth in the United States, and of course in Europe. And when globalisation and capitalism are predicated on continuous and exponential growth, what does it mean for us to see the end of that growth? Well, hopefully our esteemed speaker, Richard Heinberg, will be able to shed some light on this and challenge our perceptions. Richard is a senior fellow in residence at the Post-Carbon Institute and the author of 10 books. He's written extensively about growth, and I would like you to join me in welcoming Richard to the stage.
Thank you for that warm welcome. Well, when we speak about economic growth, what are we talking about? Generally, we're talking about growth in GDP, gross domestic product. GDP is essentially the total amount of money we spend in a national economy on an annual basis. And it's a good stand-in for consumption. When GDP goes up, consumption goes up, and vice versa. Now, most economists would tell you that economic growth has been going on for a very long time. It's always a good thing, and we can anticipate much more economic growth in the future. I'm going to challenge each of those assumptions over the course of these next few minutes. And I want to start with the one that says economic growth has been going on for a very long time. Actually, as this graph shows, if you look back over the past few centuries, you see that even though empires have risen and fallen, GDP per capita barely budged until we get just to the last 200 years. Now, these last 200 years have been really an extraordinary ride in a number of ways, because also we see that human population has grown from under 1 billion to over 7 billion today. Again, in just 200 years, that's an extraordinary and completely unprecedented rate of growth. A third trend that we see in just the last couple of hundred years is increase in energy consumption. And I'm going to argue in just a couple of minutes that this last of the 3 trends is key, that cheap energy has driven